Hello, everyone. Good evening, dear students, dear academics of our faculty, and dear guests. This evening, we are having our third episode of ArchiDesign Timber Talks at Bahçeşehir University Faculty of Architecture and Design. Our guest this evening is Francesca Brancaccio from B5 SRL. And Demet Sürücü will be our moderator again. So I will leave the word to Demet Hoca without losing much time. So okay. Demet Hoca.
Thank you very much, Salih Hocam. Good evening, dear students, dear academicians, and dear faculty members. Welcome to the third event of ArchiDesign Timber Talk series for the spring semester. Maybe I can summarize what we talked at Timber Talks for last 4 weeks. We talk about buildings designed and erected with industrial timber materials like glulam, CLT, nailed glulam, thermowood, wooden truss, etc. And we shared contemporary designs, case studies with long span with timber or high-rise buildings that designed with industrial timber materials. I think we need to think about where the innovation comes from, acknowledge history and the using timber as a solid wood, advantage of timber as a construction material, and what we done with timber. We need a look for a timber heritage, I guess. We have a valuable guest from Naples, Italy, my dear friend, Ms. Francesca Brancaccio. She is a conservation architect, specialized in conservation of heritage buildings and sites. She is Ph.D. in History of Architecture and Urban Planning. She is founder, CEO, and technical director of Italian firm B5CRL, responsible for historical research, analysis of decay and pathologies, surveys, design and construction management. She is responsible as project manager of many national and international projects of conservation of historical buildings, archaeological heritage, and UNESCO sites. These are very popular UNESCO sites: Archeological Parks of Pompeii, Colosseo, Ostia Antica, Campi Flegrei. She teaches in postgraduate School of Conservation of University of Naples Federico II, and she participates as keynote speaker in national and international conferences and talks. She is member of International Scientific Committee for the Restoration of the Tower of Saint Denis in France, and member of the Board of Directors of Assorestauro. Thank you, Francesca Brancaccio, to being with us. It's our pleasure to host you. And this evening, Francesca's topic is humble and overbearing, using timber in heritage building conservation and adaptive reuse. I will try to moderate the section. Salih Hocam and Elif Hocam are here with me. Please share your question with me at the end of the presentation, or write your question and comments at chat box. I can try to read your question on chat box for our guests. The word is yours, Francesca. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Demet. Thank you very much, everybody. Good evening to all the faculty members, the academicians, and the students which are listening to this talk. Thank you also for the long presentation that you have made. The subject of this talk today is how to use timber in historical structure, or maybe how to repair, or sometimes to intervene in order to use heritage buildings which have timber structures, and what to do if we need to restore, to consolidate, to change, to make some efforts in order to give a new life to our buildings. We know that, of course, timber has always been used in structures in order to then it is a structural material, and since very ancient times it has been used by men in order to give protection and also to become a true structural material. What to do nowadays when we have to use or reuse or to adapt our buildings to new function, and how to repair or what to do in case of needing of intervention. Of course, it is a methodological approach that we have in restoration, which needs to understand what is the problem that we have. Then as soon as we have some timber structure, the first thing to do is to study the literature of the subject, to study all the documents and the evidences that we can have, and immediately also to start to understand the elements that we have. Then to make a survey, to try to register and to record all data that we have in a complete database, make the analysis of all these technologies, and also the analysis of the environment that we have. Of course, it's very important to have information such as temperature or humidity or things like this. And then we have to understand what to do, which are the hypotheses that we can understand of the transformation of the typologies, of the solution of the dimensions, how to integrate it, and also to collect some similar case studies and then make some comparison and implementation. What is important also, of course, is to understand, to have all the information on timber, which is the timber used, kind of typology of degradation we have, which are the attacks, the biological or the not biological attacks, and also start also to make a perfect survey of every element. The aim of all this work is to understand what to do, to identify which the intervention have been made in the past, with what kind of intervention we can do today of restoration, if we need to integrate or even to replace some ruined parts, or even if we need to put some other kind of materials in order to stick to regulation and function, and to update the building according to our necessities. I would like to show you some cases, some heritage building cases in the south of Italy, and among many cases that we have already solved or we have already faced. I try to choose something in different periods of the history, and also in different cases of intervention, because in restoration we always have a case-by-case solution, which means that each case is unique. Each case must be faced as something extraordinary in some way. The first case study that I choose, it's a very ancient one, and it is linked to the question of authenticity of material and of shape, and to necessity of replace it. It's a very ancient one, and it could also be considered as a no-timber case, because we are talking about the ancient cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum in the south of Italy, which were destroyed by the eruption of the volcano Vesuvius. They are Roman cities. They were Roman cities, and they were destroyed in 79 after Christ. But in a different way, because even if they were destroyed at the same time and by the same event, the the way they were destroyed and the differences that that occurred because of the wind, because of the different phases of the eruption, made different consequences in conservation of some of the elements. The most important thing was that wood, timber, was conserved in Ercolanum and was completely destroyed in Pompeii, which means that in restoration activities, as far as, of course, they started to put to once again into light the archaeological ruins of the two cities. As far as we find wood in Ercolanum, we can in some way restore it, which means that, of course, we cannot find the wood, but of course the burnt wood, but with some chemical addiction of materials like paraffin or some resins, they are able to conserve the shape and also to conserve the material, which was the ancient wood, which means that we can understand how the ancient structures were made. We can even recuperate and consolidate the material in order to have as much as old material as we can. Here are some examples of wood which was used in structures, for doors, for boats, even for furnitures, which have been in the different centuries. The techniques were studied at the end of the 19th century, and they still today, when they find some elements, they are able to conserve the shape and even what is still kept of the material. Of course, in some cases, they need some reintegration with modern wood or with some resins. Different cases, the case of Pompeii. Pompeii was covered by a thicker layer of volcanic material, and also which was much more which burned everything, and then the timber was not conserved at all. We don't have any trace of timber, but we can understand where some timber structures were. For example, in this case, the case of the SBAP of Pompeii, they are the center of the town of Pompeii, and they could understand this was these were the ruins as soon as they were discovered. It is a portic which lose completely all the timber elements which were supposed to be here. Then there was a roof, but we don't have any trace of this roof. Then the idea of the restoration of the beginning of the 20th century was anyway to reconstruct elements that were missing, and they decided to do it. This is the reconstruction with new material. Then the new material that was chosen was concrete. You can remember that, maybe you know, I don't know, that in the Chart of Athens in 1931, the reconstruction of missing materials was welcome, and they even suggest to use new materials, and the concrete was one of the materials that was suggested in order to be distinguished by the old material that were missing. Then in this case, in 1950, the archaeologists decided to reconstruct, to repropose the idea of this porch with, which is a triporticus, with concrete beams. Of course, today these concrete beams start to give very big problems to the ancient walls, because of degradation, because of the iron that was inside that was oxidated and was also damaging the walls. Then the willing of the Archaeological Park of Pompeii was to get rid of this old structure and to demolish everything and to propose a new wood structure. This is maybe a methodologically a very extreme situation, if you want, because of course we know that once there was a wooden roof, and we know it because they discovered the old traces of the beams. But of course, nobody has never had the old imagine of this porch, even if we know about timber structures in Pompeii only from the frescoes that are in Pompeii. Then the idea here is to go back to history through, of course, an invention, which is a structure that, of course, existed, but that nowadays exists once again because we are changing the material from a modern material to a more traditional material. The idea is to have a material, of course, which can give the idea of being more traditional, but also which has a better compatibility with the walls, which means that once the wood will become older and it will, of course, have some decays, the consequences that this decays can have on old walls will be less with less impact than the concrete head, of course. In terms of identity, in terms of authenticity, this might be a kind of intervention that could, in some ways, make people understand, people which are not, of course, educated and which cannot understand that wood does not exist today, old wood does not exist today in Pompeii. Then tourists could think that it is an old material, and this is maybe the philosophical and methodological matter and question that we have to understand, because we know in restoration that it is very important to be able to distinguish the old from the new. In this case, the matter of being able to distinguish could be a problem, and which means that it is very, very important to explain that it is not an old material, of course, but it's a new material that has been used because of compatibility and also for a question of imaging of the traditional imaging of the space. Another subject that I would like to present, always in the south of Italy, or maybe in the middle of Italy. We are among Naples and Rome. Naples is in the south of Italy and Rome is the capital, in the middle of the country. It is a little town which is called Ceprano. It is not far from Frosinone. It was a Roman city which was destroyed during the Roman period and rebuilt in medieval age with the stones and with the remains of the old city, the old Roman city. Which means that today we have a medieval city with very narrow houses, very poor houses also, because it was not a very, very rich town, but it had the traditional medieval Italian house, which was a house which had a shop in the which gave on the street, and then all the other rooms, one up to the other, on the different floors upstairs. This town was also destroyed during Second World War because it was bombed. Then you can see that there are many spaces which are empty because the traditional urban path was destroyed, and was then there are many houses that are no more in the country. The object of the work in this place was to work on some of the medieval houses which belong to the municipality of Ceprano, and the municipality wants these houses to become houses for poor people, for people who cannot afford high rent, and that can rent it very low prices. The first idea of the municipality, and this can also show how the philosophy of restoration and also the idea of what is valuable to conserve in Italy is changing, because only in 2016 they wanted to destroy these old houses and to build new houses in concrete, and the project was already made, and also the enterprise was chosen in order to start this work site. And I was appointed as director of work, as supervisor of work. And then I was also called to destroy these old medieval houses. While talking with the local heritage or services, I started saying that it was a really big pity to destroy these houses, not because they were very important houses or that there were some artistic items or any valuable elements, but because the value was the building itself, because it was the witness of the tradition of the country, the tradition of this town, the tradition of peasants that were able to build their own houses using old Roman stones, and also the walls made of Roman stones had its importance. Of course, much of them were abandoned from many years and also destroyed by the bombs. Then it was not easy to convince the municipality to try to make another kind of work, but at least the Ministry of Culture obliged them to do it, and this is what is happening now. We are still working on this. It's a work that is not still finished. Then we were obliged to study every house from the beginning, then all the research and the survey, stone by stone survey, element by element, timber by timber, trying to understanding all the elements that we could save, and all the other that we were obliged to destroy because they were not no more ensuring security, or we were not able to restore them, or also because they were not valuable elements but just rubbish which was inside the buildings. Some of the view of the houses, you can see that they are very traditional. The walls are made of these Roman stones, and then we have all the floors which are in timber, and also the roofs which are in timbers covered with tiles. all the elements that have been studied and investigated with even an archaeological approach, then even if all the elements are very poor elements, but every every iron that we found, every little element of popular, of traditional culture was saved and was studied. And after all the survey, the intervention which changes case by case, even if we have some elements which are almost the same. I mean, the technology are always the same. What is changing is that in some cases we could save some elements, and in other we could not. In some cases we could, for example, we had some investigation of walls, and the walls were better made than in other cases. Then we could, for example, rely on walls supporting the structures. In other cases, we were obliged to make an internal structure which avoided to put weight and put efforts on the walls, because the walls were so were not able to support the new weights that we need. Once again, some studies that were made. You see every element, every stone, every degradation was also investigated. And then we started to think about how to consolidate the walls, because of course we wanted to see them, because they are made of Roman stones, and it's interesting to see these walls. Then to find a way of consolidating without having plasters outside. This is one of the houses during our work of survey. You can see that the degradation was complete because of the bombs, because of the roofs that were collapsed, and then the rain entered and destroyed everything, because of years and years of lack of maintenance and abandon of everything. And then we started to consolidate the walls and to think about, in some cases, an internal structure that could avoid to have any interferences on the walls, and to do it with the iron and with this Ixlam wood, which was a very clever method to give the old idea of the floors that we used to have with the traditional material, which is the wood, but with the modern technologies. Here are some examples. In other cases, we were able to keep even the material, the old beams, but of course the old beams did not give any assurance of being able to keep the weight that we need. Then we need to reinforce them by adding some modern elements. In this case, we put iron elements. And we had then, it was a sort of compromising solution. I mean, I wanted to keep as much as old material that I could, but I need also, of course, also to have some floors that were ensuring the use that is forecasted, which is also residential use. And then this is why we need to add some reinforcements. In this case, it is we can distinguish it. Then we had the old wall, the old timber, and the iron elements which are supporting the timber. And we are also keeping all the old elements that we can, and changing all the elements that we cannot reuse. Then you can see even here the beams. You have old beams and also modern beams together with the old. All the system was also reinforced by some concrete elements all around the box of the walls. Then there were, we call it code di rondine, which is like some little iron elements that are entering the walls, and with some concrete injection, they are making a sort of way of belting the building in correspondence of the floors. For the roof, the same thing. We were able to keep all the beams of the roof, and also to, of course, to improve the thermal insurance, the thermal resistance of the building, by putting all the elements that could satisfy the energetic regulation that we have in Italy. And we were able also to reuse the old tiles together with modern tiles. Then we can recuperate the old one and we put it on the top, and the new one that we needed, because we did not have enough old, of course, to put together. And then we have an old image which is collaborating with new material together. Here the roof, you see the wooden element that we are recuperating from the old structure, and together with new one. Once again, during the work site, of course, at the interior, we did not have any floor at all, but we kept all the elements that we could keep, and we integrated in the new structure. This is another case. In this case, we were obliged to make in the box, in the old box, a new concrete structure, always with X-lam between the beams, the concrete beams, and at the same time we are keeping the old beams, which don't have any structural function in this case, but they have they give a traditional image, and they are kept in the same place where they were. You see the concrete elements which are going up, and they are also keeping the roof, because even the roof is not linked to the ancient wall, but is linked only to the concrete structure. The third case, it's in another little house. Here we could use the walls in order to keep the floors, but we decided not to put wooden beams, but to use iron beams, always with the X-lam among the beams, and always keeping the old timber beams. And also the idea, the effect that you can reach is very interesting, because you have traditional walls, and when you change, because here we did not have any floor, any ancient floor anymore, they were all collapsed, then you change it, but you have a modern image with together with traditional and modern materials which are linked together. For the roof, we decided to keep the traditional technology, but we changed all the beams, because we had only maybe one or two that were still on place, but they were not. They were attacked by fungin decays and also many insects, then it was really not possible to save them anymore. But then we measured them and we made beams which have exactly the same shape and of course made of the same wood. And the same technology. Another case, we are passing from very, very poor houses to a very rich house, which was a palace for an aristocratic family of the 18th century in the center of Naples, the city of Naples, the center, the historical center of the city of Naples is a UNESCO site. And then a World Heritage, it has a World Heritage protection zone. And in this zone, which was the old Greek first and then Roman city, an important Neapolitan family, the family of Caracciolo di Avellino, built a very, very big building, which was supposed to be also the a sort of university of an academical place where all philosophers and artists and important intellectuals of the city used to stay and to discuss and to have conferences and lectures. And of course, during the centuries, when the family sold the palace, it was divided into different properties, and they lost even the memory of beautiful frescoes that were described in literature and very beautiful artistic elements, and it was used as a school and completely covered with a white paint. Then all the layers of the frescoes were completely covered. We cannot see anything more. Here, one of the most important question while restoring this heritage building was the earthquake, because Naples is a seismic zone. We had a very important earthquake in 1980, which destroyed lots of buildings in the city and which damaged also a lot of buildings. And the history of our region is anyway an history of earthquakes. We can remember that even Roman in Pompeii and in Herculaneum used wooden structures. We called it opus gratitium, which are used in many other countries of the world and in Turkey as well, and for seismic purposes, because for anti-seismic purposes, because it's they are kind of structure which resists very well to seismic, because they can give the opportunity of having very high walls which can have a good response to seismic solicitation. And we call it, in the south of Italy, it is called casa baraccata, because it looks like a barrack, it looks like a provisional construction. And it was used in 18th and 19th century after a very severe earthquake that we had in Ischia, Casamicciola, at the end of 18th century, and also another very important earthquake in south of Italy, which was at the beginning of 20th century in Messina and Reggio Calabria, which completely destroyed the two cities. This building was also abandoned, and the owner, which was able to buy all the building, wanted it to become a museum for contemporary art. Of course, the museum needs in order to have a building which is a museum, you need to comply to different regulation for, of course, for seismic, but also for fire and many other laws that you have to follow, and which is always a very important problem when you when you want to reuse a building and then to adapt it to different functions. Once again, the investigations, the knowledge of the building is the most important thing to do, because when you know, when you study, when you understand the geometry, when you understand the materials, when you understand the decays, when you understand why you can find some decays, you can of course fight them, but and repair them, but also prevent from future decays. And also you can understand what to do and how to intervene, which kind of methodology you can afford in this case. What we decided to do here, as our philosophy teaches us, is to do as less as possible. This is what we strongly believe, that for us restoration is to recognize the values, to try to conserve every element that you can identify as a value of the building, and try to intervene as less as you can. We call it the minimum intervention. Then once you can do less, you are really succeeding in your work. In this case, of course, the survey showed that we had a building which was built in two different phases. We have the lower part of the building, which was made in stones, Neapolitan stones, which is tuffo stones, which is a volcanic stone. And the structure was then wall with vaults, with vaults in, you can see in the section, the part which are in black, and strong black is the profile of the vaults. And the two upper levels, the two upper floor, were with the roof, we had a floor and a roof which were in timber. Then the first thing to do was to consolidate the building, then to, of course, to make some verification in order to improve the strength and to earthquakes. These were some elements that we were able to discover during the restoration activities. For instance, all the frescoes in all the rooms at the first and second floor that we were obliged also to conserve. We could not intervene on walls with consolidations activities, because we had very beautiful plasters with very beautiful frescoes. And then the intervention had to also to understand this kind of problem and to respect all the values of the building. As far as you can see, what we wanted to keep was, of course, the the two floors in wood, the upper floors, and at the same time to have a better resistance to earthquake. Then what we decided to do was to put some chains, iron chains, which could improve the resistance of the building. Then they were very little elements which were inserted at the lower floors in order to improve the resistance. And in some cases also, when we had some very important degradation of the wall, some important ledgers, we were able to make some consolidation intervention. The same thing also for the vaults. When where necessary, we made some intervention of the vaults. What about the timber? The problem was that in some cases we had very important frescoes, and of course we could not take them away. Or in some other cases we were able to analyze all the timber beams and to understand that we could keep them. Then the only work that was done was to reinforce the end of the beams where they are introduced into the wall, and also only to clean them as less as we can in order to prevent any insect or any kind of further degradation. And also we were able to keep some little traces of paper which was painted, which was traditionally put on the beams. And when we found them, we were able to restore them and to find them once again. Here you have the vaulted spaces at the ground floor and the first floor. And we rediscovered all the frescoes which were completely hidden. And also we were able to restore all the windows and all the other wooden elements, the doors, and that were original. And unfortunately we could not find out the original color because they were all repainted, but we found then I would have liked to find the original layer of the painter, but it was not possible to make it. But we found the original color, then we repainted it in the original color. When the beams were not strong enough in order to support the charge that the new museum should have supported, because at the upper floor they wanted to make a sort of restaurant, cafeteria, and auditorium, which had to stand very, very big weights. We were obliged, we wanted to keep the old beams in order to make people understand which was the old technologies, and also because the beams were not damaged and we could keep them, but they were not enough in order to take the weight that the new building was asked to support. Then they were reinforced with iron beams, which are working together and are collaborating in order to adapt this building to the new function. Of course, here you have the idea of being able to distinguish modern from ancient. You keep the ancient. You are not cheating, because you are showing how the structure is behaving nowadays. And you can also have a sort of reversibility of the intervention, because once the museum would not be there and you would like to recover the old technology, the only thing that you have to do is to take away the beams, the iron beams, and you can find once again the old timber beams. Of course, what you are missing are the wooden elements among the beams, which is in the tradition of the Neapolitan floor. But we could not. There were elements that we were obliged to eliminate because they were not supporting anymore. They were all completely destroyed, and then we were really obliged to destroy them. What about earthquake? Once again, we discovered in these elements, the red one and the blue one, that they were built after 19th century, and they were built in the system, the opus gratitium, in the system of Casa Baraccata. They were hiding wooden elements together with masonry. And what to do in this case? Of course, when we had frescoes, we could do anything because we could not take the plaster away in order to reinforce the wooden elements. We were able to investigate them with thermography, and in the very limited places where we did not have frescoes, we could make some kind of reinforcement of these elements, once again by using some iron elements that were hidden then in the new plaster. And this is the effect that you have today, which are new plasters, of course, and new painting where necessary, and the respect of what was already existing. Here you can see there is a decoration of the beginning of 19th century, and also an ancient wall, and all the doors, everything was kept, but the plaster where we were hiding the modern structure. And once again, one of the effects of the restoration today. Then I don't know how much time I still have. Maybe a few minutes. Just to give some general rules of the intervention. The use of timber as a construction material dates back to ancient history, and we have different technologies. Then we have to understand case by case which is the technology. We have to study which the technology are. We can consider historical timber structure as a paradigm of diversity. Diversity means that each element, each part of an element is a mark of heritage authenticity. It means that the structure can change, can be various, and it can has also different levels. And also that there is a variation in the typological form, which means that we have a special task. We have to recognize, we have to capture, we have to interpret all the differences. And we have to understand that, yes, of course, timber is can be a very strong material, but has also lots of sensibility to external condition. And then when there is a lack of maintenance, then when there is a lack of keeping, it is very difficult to be able to keep it. What is important is the change of the way of thinking. In Italy, nowadays we are having a new way of thinking, which is not to destroy timber. Only 20 or 30 years ago, the easiest thing to do was to destroy a timber structure and to propose a steel structure, to propose a concrete structure, to propose glulam in place of timber. And today, the idea is to the methodology is to keep as much as you can, to study it, to understand which can be the solution in order to intervene. And you can do it through, of course, very scientific investigation campaign, because of course you need to know the geometry, you need to understand the joints, you need to understand the causes of the damages, and you need also to make an intervention planning. You need also to understand which is the behavior, the structural behavior in the organism, in the building itself, and you have to apply a methodology which relies on reversibility, minimal intervention, the idea of saving as much as possible, the idea also of distinguish the new from the old. And of course, every case needs a suitable strategy. Then you cannot have a one-case solution, but every project needs to understand which are the problems and how to intervene, how to re-give, if you can, the integrity of the timber framework. How can you satisfy also aesthetic and historical requirements together? You can repair, of course. You have to take into account the character and the age of the timber that you are repairing. You have to choose some new material which is sympathetic to the actual building itself, and which also sticks to the old material, and everything is a contribute to the history and the historical interests of the building's fabric. You need then to make a careful investigation, a specification, and also you need to have workers which are able to work on wood. Then the execution is very, very important. It is a very specific profession, and you need professional to do this. There is not restoration or conservation project that can be successful unless you don't have good workers specialized in wood, which understands the wood and understands how to intervene, which are the technologies which are only specific of this kind of material. You can, of course, make a like-for-like repairs. You must do an honest repair. An honest repair means that you have always to choose the suitable procedure of investigation and of preservation, which is sometimes also needs preliminary temporary structures in order to protect the timber and also to reach the timber. In some cases, you cannot reach it without using, for example, scaffolding, and sometimes you need time to do this. And it's not always something that you can do while you are making the design, but it's something that you can discover when you are doing the work. Of course, the diagnosis that you have to do is a very scientific diagnosis. Also, in this case, you need professionals which are experts of this material. Then, because you need to identify the wooden species, you need to identify the moisture content. You have to understand the classes of biological attack risks. You have to, of course, study the geometry and the morphology of every element, and also the elements of decay, the damages. And there's it is not something that a general technician can do, but you need someone who is really specialized in this kind of understanding. and also try to understand which is the critical areas and the grading according to the existence of timber elements in the wall structure. Rules. The only rules are that you have to try as much as you can to respect the identity of the building, to understand the impact of the architectural intervention, and you have to restore as far as possible the original core values. Which means that in each case, you have to make a critical selection of possible technical solution. You have to try to keep the historical and the aesthetic characteristics, and once again, to respect the criteria of reversibility, compatibility, minimum intervention, and I dare say also being able to distinguish it. All these things aimed at sustainability and conservation of wooden structure, and also integration of them when you need it. I think that all these elements, then to find out the values, the traditional elements, to find all what you are obliged to lose and what you have to keep, to be able to restore when necessary, to be able also to help wood when it cannot work by itself, but it needs a little help. These are the aims that lead to the transmission of tangible and intangible values to future generation, which is the principal scope of restoring, of conserving, of protective, in order to transmit these values, and also to have keeping rules that help to maintain the heritage to the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Francesca. Thank you very much for the detailed and very detailed presentation about conservation and restoration of traditional timber structures. And I think the presentation is explaining the way of how we transfer tangible and intangible heritage to future generations. It's very simple way. We need to keep authenticity, and we need to find the best ways for sustainability, I think. And we have good examples with your works here, and we have a knowledge about how we keep our timber heritage, how we can use rules and wood spaces, new materials. I think we see all keywords for restoration or heritage, timber heritage conservation works here. Maybe our friends or academicians has some questions for you. You can stop your sharing. Maybe we can see your face.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Is there any question for Francesca? We have some friends working for restoration and conservation. Some of our academicians are working for this site. Maybe they have some questions or say some words to say, not only questions. Salih Hocam, do you have any question?
Actually, I do, but I want maybe some other people would have some questions.
Okay.
If not, I can ask my question, of course.
Yeah, I can see any question. Please, Salih Hocam.
Okay. Firstly, thank you for this presentation. It was very informative and interesting, actually, to see timber also used with these, let's say, conservation and restoration purposes. I am more curious about the decision process. How do you, let's say, evaluate these buildings to, let's say, conserve and use timber in these buildings. Let's say that's the first part. Secondly, how does it, let's say, connect with current contemporary technologies in timber? Do you also use these, let's say, contemporary methods and new technologies by, let's say, preservation and using these, let's say, contemporary systems in timber?
Okay. Thank you for these questions. The decisional process is maybe the most difficult part of the work, because it depends really on every case, and it belongs to the architect, of course, but it depends also on the client, and it depends also on the heritage institution, which don't have actually we don't have rules. Then it means that you have a methodological approach, and you have, first of all, you have to be convinced of it, and then you have to try to convince also the other, or in other cases you can also discuss about what to do. The principal idea is, of course, really try to do as less as you can. If you have a good structure, if you have a structure which is still, you can just repair it, you can just make a little intervention. Of course, the idea is to keep as much as you can of the ancient, of the old, or to maybe in some cases, if you have enough material, also to replace little elements. But when in these cases, which I showed, are very extreme cases, because you have, in some cases, you really don't have material. Then you have the idea of the material that was there. You know that it was a beam, a wooden beam, but you also know that it is destroyed, that it collapsed, that it is completely eaten by insect, or completely destroyed by water and all the decays. Then in these cases, of course, you can use once again timber, and you must use it with the old technologies. Then you have to study how it was the old technologies. But you also, the very important thing is that you have also workers which are able to do this. And then sometimes the decisional process is also to know who is working with you and if it is able to do what you want. Because otherwise, it's better to make something more simple, because otherwise you cannot reach the result that you want. This is also because of the laws that we have in Italy, because we have more and more general enterprises which do not have specialized workers, and they win the bidder, and then you cannot have specialized workers on your work site. And then in these cases, you need also to adapt your project. Maybe you have the best project in the world, but if you cannot have people who is able to do it, you need to be simpler and to make something that works. This is a big problem also in public restoration. And this is linked also to the second question, the use of contemporary technologies. Yes, of course, but the problem is to have people who is then able to build it, because for example, and I am having now a new project, and we are finishing it. And we wanted to ask for specialized a little specialized enterprise which is able to restore wood, to restore timber. And the owner, which is a public owner, did not want us to put in the appel d'offre, I don't know, in the bid documents, that we wanted a specific kind of enterprises, because they want to have a more open competition on the market, but which means, of course, also less quality in the execution of work. I don't know if in Turkey we have the same problem or it's better.
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, I'm not an expert, but I'm sure it's not much better than over there.
We have another question from Miray Hocam, I think.
Thanks for your answer, by the way. It was very thorough and explanatory. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, by the way, for this very stimulating presentation. I think it had been really very helpful for our students and for us. I have a question. In fact, your presentation was so detailed. It's really very hard to, find a point to ask a question because all the answers were in there. But since Italy is an earthquake area, and you said that especially for about maybe 20 years, this approach has changed. I mean, you are trying to keep as much as possible, especially when it comes to wood. I thought that with that approach, of course, the process needs more time, more research, more energy, more financial resources, I guess, because especially because of this earthquake.
Can you listen?
We can
I think
hear Nilay Hocam.
Nilay is somehow disconnected.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm sure she will come back
Yes.
somehow.
Come back. Maybe Elif Hocam has a question
In
now.
the meanwhile, I don't know, is it a question or I'm just curious about this. There are a lot of restoration projects. Are there also some cases where also the restoration of the restorated projects are needed? Because let's say the solution is not correct, the material was not appropriate, or you already touched the topic, maybe the persons working on this issue were not how can I say, specific enough and whatever. Are there also such examples in Italy?
Yes, we are starting to restore which was elements which were not well restored. Unfortunately, not in timber, because as I was saying, timber was destroyed or neglected. Then when neglected, we can restore it. But when destroyed, yes, of course, you can take away, maybe, for example, as we did in Pompeii, you can take away the concrete and make maybe a new timber roof if you want, which is, of course, a very strong choice, which must be very well motivated as well. I mean, because if the concrete structure still works, you don't do it, or if you can destroy it if it's really ugly, or if it's something that does not work because it's destroying or is giving bad effects on what you still have. Otherwise, you also keep it, and then the problem is that sometimes the pity is that you don't find wood anymore because they decide to get rid of it, And really, in the last years, I was able to save many wood timber elements which were supposed to be destroyed, because as soon as you have a project which, but till maybe really till 2002, 2003, but even some architects still today, they think that it's better to get away, to get rid of timber structure because they don't know how to restore it. This is the problem. They don't have the knowledge. They don't know that they can restore it, and they think that it's better to. Maybe they think it's too difficult to keep. It's too difficult to restore. It costs too much, and it's not worthy. They don't understand that it is a value.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We were not able to listen to your question. Yeah,
I am back, but it took some time. I'm sorry. But I heard some part of it. I thought that, I mean, keeping as much as possible might bring some risks about structural instability, in the process. Or does it somehow?
We never destroy because of stability. When there is a stability problem, we try to reinforce. We try to help the wood, the timber with some other elements, which is also reversible, which gives the possibility of coming back. I mean, if you put something, it's like someone who's not able to work it by itself, and you give a little stick in order to help, and you can always get rid of the stick. Then and you have, but at least you have the material, which is the original material, which is on place. The only motivation that we have when we destroy timber is when timber is already destroyed. It's like having a decay. When you take away material from your teeth, is because you have the risk of infecting the rest, and that's why you have to take it away. Otherwise, you keep it. Yeah, there's no way. Because it's a value.
One of our students has a question. Maten Mohammed has a question.
Hi everyone.
Hi.
Ms. Francesca, thank you for your talk.
Thank you.
So I have a question. After doing the restorations on wood, and by checking the, how can I say it? I mean the resources, the money resource that goes into it. Does the wood after restoration lose its worth, or does it earn value?
I'm afraid I don't understand. Sorry.
Well, after restoring a building.
Yes.
Since it's historical and the wood is considered as a historical part of the building.
Yes.
After restoration, does the wood lose its value? I mean, by its historical value.
You mean the value, the economical value?
Yes.
There is always
I mean, is it considered as a historical after restoration, or is it not? That's the question.
Yes, it is, and every restoration leads to an increase of the value of the monument.
Okay, I got it.
Because you can reuse it, sometimes because you discover also some values. For example, this palace I showed, the Palazzo Caracciolo di Avellino, they even did not know that there were 18th century frescoes, very beautiful frescoes on the walls, in the vaults. Everything was white. Nobody knows that there were frescoes, and we just started to see if we could take a plaster away, and then we take the first layer of color, and we started to discover that there were frescoes. And then we discovered 2 floors of frescoes, of 18th century frescoes, completely conserved because they were only covered by layers of color. And which means that the owner, he bought the palace for 1 million euro, and now the value is more than 7 million or euro, even more maybe.
Okay.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Francesca, I think we have no question. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for the presentation. I hope to see you in Istanbul.
See you soon. I will be on the 12th May. Then we will meet with big pleasure at the Heritage.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I think Salih Hocam wants to say some words.
Yes, I'm just going to close the session, but before that, I would like to thank our guest, Francesca, for this very informative and inspiring presentation. And here in our faculty, we have a small tradition. We donate in our guest's name. So today we have made a donation in your name to SAY Foundation, which helps underprivileged children for equality in education. So thanks a lot again for your time and effort. And we hope to see you again, maybe face-to-face this time in Istanbul.
With pleasure, and thank you very much for everything, and teşekkürler.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Teşekkürler. Bye bye, Francesca.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
So thanks everyone for joining in today, and hope to see you again in the next episode of ArchiDesign Talks.
Thank you,
Good
Salih
evening.
Hocam.
Thank
Thank you, Demet Hocam, for your moderation.
Thank you. See you.
Good evening.